Hi everyone, I'm Robina.
And I'm Layla.
Welcome back to our channel, Nutrition Unpacked,
where we try diets so you don't have to.
Our intermittent fasting journey continues.
Yes.
Kind of,
sort of. I'm done and I'm really happy to be done.
We already finished our 2 weeks of intermittent fasting, but we're still talking about it.
We still are talking about it.
We can't all shut up about it.
It was a hard 2 weeks, I would say.
It was not a good time.
I thought, like, as we progressed, it would get easier, but no, it didn't.
You just ended up with more situations where it was inconvenient. There were days where I had to, like, cut off my eating window at, like, 6. Today and tomorrow are gonna be kind of weird days. Tonight I have a workshop that I have to go to from 6:15 to 9:15. I'm not gonna be able to eat during that whole time. So basically, I'm gonna have to finish my eating today at like 6 p.m. Like, what? I'm gonna be starved by the time I go to bed. I mean, I guess the way I could look at it as well, I guess my eating window tomorrow could open at 10 technically, but then I don't want to eat at 10 because then I'm gonna have to keep closing my eating window by 6 p.m. You guys, this is dumb. Like, what are we doing here? Why are we doing this?
It was just inconvenient, and then like sometimes it was just like I couldn't eat, so my fasting window was so long, and then I was so hungry.
Yeah, you were doing like 20
I was 20 hours. I don't know. That's like some people do that every day, and I don't know how, because I just had like a constant headache. It is 10:30-ish, and I woke up this morning feeling like pretty okay, pretty good. And I'm gonna tell you now, I'm so hungry, and because I was a little bit delayed eating yesterday, I extended my eating window by an hour, which means I have to extend my fasting window by an hour today too. So I won't be eating till 1, and I'm so hungry. I'm so hungry. I just want to eat. I have a headache. My tummy hurts. I want to eat.
So would you say that your hormones were out of whack?
Probably my satiety ones.
People talk about hormones a lot.
They do.
And intermittent fasting. I mean, food in general, like the idea of like, ooh, do this and they'll balance your hormones. I think like people just, hormones are like the thing that's like.
It's a hot word.
Yes.
It's making us gain weight, it's making us moody, it's making us grumpy, it's making us sick, and we need to balance them.
There's a balancing your hormones is a very common phrase, and I feel like it's like one of those things of like boosting your metabolism.
Yes.
It's like one of those phrases that people just love to repeat.
Yes.
Like, this diet can help you balance your hormones.
Some people will say intermittent fasting will balance your hormones, and then more recently I've been hearing that intermittent fasting is not great for females, but then now it's gone even a step further, and then there are like books and stuff that are like, in day 1 to X of your cycle, you gotta fast for this amount, and then day for
8 through 10, then you do this amount, and then this day you cannot fast, but then the day after you should fast the whole day.
Yes. And I'm like, when I first started seeing that stuff, I was like, okay, we know that like research on female health is like pretty subpar, and I'm like, did we really get to the point where we can make that level of recommendation? I was like, that can't be.
Yeah.
And I was right.
You were right. Spoiler, you're right. But men, also, this time we didn't forget about you when it comes to hormones, because there's all kinds of crazy claims with male hormones as well.
It's going to boost your testosterone, it's going to drop your testosterone, you're going to get all the gains. You're going to get all the gains, you're going to be so muscular, you're going to be so potent, you're going to no longer need Viagra.
And I gotta say, to be totally honest, I think first a lot of the research to make sense, we're gonna have to give you a lot of background info first.
So a little bio 101.
Hormones are often referred to as chemical messengers. Essentially what they are these compounds that get produced in one part of your body and will typically travel to another part of your body to enact some sort of function or outcome. For example, we've talked about in some of our other videos, there's a hormone called leptin. It's produced by your fat cells. It goes to your brain, and it's kind of involved in energy balance regulation.
Yeah, and I think people, when they think hormones, I think it's automatically like go to sex, because I think I remember
sex or emotion.
Mood, yeah. But I think it's because like, remember grade 4 health class where they're talking about, well, kids, your bodies are changing, you have hormones. But they're like, hormones are involved in so many different things. We have over 50 hormones, which I actually thought was more.
It seems like a small number. I saw that and I was like,
I know.
really? Over 50?
I know, because I had originally been like, we have hundreds
of hormones.
And then I looked it up, and there's like, we've identified over 50.
Yeah, to be honest, that number seemed low. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in our bodies.
There is.
And only 50-ish?
Yeah, I hope I did look it up. And that's what came up. So. And I looked, there were multiple sources. But
I guess some hormones do a lot of things.
Yeah, some of them do a lot of things. They act on different tissues and different ways, and some of them are up regulators and down regulators and all kinds of different things. So basically, hormones are just little chemicals in your body that tell other things to do stuff.
Today specifically, let's dive into reproductive hormones, because I feel like reproductive health and vitality and menstruation, like I think intermittent fasting gets brought up a lot in that context.
Reproductive hormones are hormones that are involved in the reproductive systems. Generally, they're related to either your primary or your secondary sex characteristics. We think of like testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, all those fun things. That is what we are talking about today. And I think there is like a lot of interest when it comes to these hormones because sex sells. We like give these hormones a lot of importance, you know, and like they are important.
Testosterone, as I think most people already know, does tend to be associated with more masculine sexual characteristics. It's involved in the development of primary sex characteristics, like the development of the testicles and sperm production, but also in secondary sex characteristics like body hair, facial hair, deepening of the voice, and muscle mass as well.
We think of testosterone, we only think of males typically, but both males and females have testosterone in their bodies, and it plays important roles for both, but generally we do see higher levels in males and lower levels in females.
I think the less intuitive contribution of testosterone is actually its role in bone health. It's actually kind of important for bone density and strength as well. Often I think high testosterone is associated with rage and unstable mood maybe. But interestingly, testosterone is associated with actually having more stable mood.
And that's why women can't run countries.
Yes.
Because we don't have enough
starting wars every month, you know?
Yeah.
The complement to testosterone is often seen as estrogen. That's the female hormone, which generally, fair enough, yeah. But again, both males and females have testosterone and estrogen, just in different amounts.
Estrogen is involved in primary and secondary sex characteristics as well. So when it comes to the primary sex characteristics, it's involved in the development of the ovaries, fallopian tube, uterus, and the vagina. When it comes to the secondary sex characteristics, it's involved in the development of the breasts, distribution of body fat, as well as the onset of menstruation, which we love.
We love menstruation. Here. Woo!
And it is also important for bone health. So
yes,
these hormones do it the most.
Yeah, they're doing great.
And just to fuel all the stereotypes and stuff, estrogen is kind of associated with mood and cognitive function as well. The menstrual cycle, there are fluctuations in estrogen, and that can lead to fluctuations in mood, which we also love.
We also love. Honestly, that's facts. Yeah, I'm a PMSer sometimes, and sometimes when you're in the heat of it, you're like, I'm being completely rational, and then afterwards, that was kind of insane.
For me, I feel like it's I know the words flying out of my mouth are complete nonsense right now, but they're still coming.
Sometimes it's I'm being a bitch, and I know I'm being a bitch, but I can't stop being a bitch.
Yes.
And why? But you're why is this? And then you'll get your period 3 days later, and you're like, wow, that was why.
It's a surprise every month.
Also, though, estrogen is protective against cardiovascular disease, so we do have that. So we see higher rates of cardiovascular disease among males for a few different reasons, but one of them is they don't have as much estrogen as us. They might be doing well mood-wise and stability-wise, but
we're gonna live longer.
We're gonna live longer. We also have other important reproductive hormones like luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, and then there's all the hormones that act in your brain that tell your brain to release these other hormones that tell your ovaries to release other hormones. So there's a bunch of different ones, and they all play important roles in the reproductive system, and then also some other roles not in the reproductive system. Why is there so much talk about intermittent fasting and hormones? I don't know, it's on TikTok, which is my one reference for everything because that's all I do is TikTok. But
it's my window into society.
100%. And for some reason there's a huge window looking into intermittent fasting and hormones.
You've heard about intermittent fasting, but you're worried that you might mess with your hormones.
If you're a female and you want to do intermittent fasting, watch this. Women are not tiny men. Our bodies are made to create life.
So here's how intermittent fasting lowers testosterone levels.
So because of our hormones and our menstrual cycle, we have to fast different than men.
I want to share one tip on how us females can intermittent fast and still keep our hormones healthy.
I think it's probably just because it's just vague enough of a word that you kind of know what it is, but you mostly don't know what it is. So you can kind of say whatever you want about it, and it's believable.
For the amount of social media content about hormones and intermittent fasting and menstrual cycles and intermittent fasting and testosterone and intermittent fasting, There is very, 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 very limited research.
I'm actually blown away that people are writing entire books on this topic when it's like, what's in the book?
I actually don't know because it's like 5 studies. Our friends, the rodents, our little rodent friends, have been a common theme as we've been going through the intermittent fasting research, and again, did not disappoint here. And when I was like going through a lot of like the blogs that are out there about intermittent fasting, there was a specific study that came up like a few different times. And not our friend the mouse, but our friend the rat. I think this is where a lot of the like hype around hormones, like is this gonna affect your cycle and all these different things came up. So this one study is quite illustrious in a lot of different blogs. Basically, they had some little baby rats, 3-month-old rats. These rats were doing intermittent fasting, alternate day fasting. They looked at the effects of this on their hormones, and they found that it increased type of estrogen hormone called estradiol, decreased luteinizing hormone, and then generally just negatively impacted their estrous cycle, which is like kind of like the rat version of a menstrual cycle. What's interesting though is in this study, the rats were like very young. There were 3-month-old rats, which I have read corresponds to like a human child. So they weren't like fully sexually mature rats, so it's kind of hard to then evaluate, you know, their applicability.
Let's talk about the humans, us peeps. And how intermittent fasting might affect us. And to be honest, this area of research is not quite as rich as I would have liked. Especially when you talk about females and estrogen hormones, there's almost like no research on premenopausal women. And there's a few studies on postmenopausal women, which kind of surprised me because I was like, you know, I feel like, you know,
Females are only worth is to have babies, so wouldn't we care more about premenopausal women?
but no.
They're hard to study.
They're hard to study. QE changing all the time.
All the time, hormones up and down, how are we busy measuring it? Those were our rat friends, and they fasted, and we saw that it increased their estrogen levels. Then we look to our human friends, and we try to see what is the impact of fasting on their estrogen levels. And interestingly, in the rats, we looked at very, very young rats. In humans, we looked at very, very old humans, so only postmenopausal humans. And there's actually no effect of a fasting protocol, which involves 8 weeks of fasting where they had 4 to 6 hour eating windows every day on estrogen in postmenopausal women. It's something. I don't know what it is, but it is something.
Yes, rats, not humans. Confirmed. Let's talk about androgens now.
There have been a couple of studies in this area in obese and overweight participants. And so participants who are doing a 5-2 fast, so that's where you have your 5 days of eating and 2 days of very low calorie. They had a 500 calorie intake on these fasting days. The free androgen index, which is kind of a measure of the physiologically active amounts of testosterone in the body, did decrease. But what's very interesting is that we actually saw the exact same thing when people were just doing continuous calorie restriction. So basically it seems no matter what, however you decide to reduce your caloric intake, you're gonna see potentially small decreases in your free androgen index.
So another thing that's kind of like driving home the point that it might just come down to total calories more than anything is sex hormone binding globulin, a transporter of sex hormones, both estrogens and androgens. What we find is that low levels of this globulin is actually associated with increased incidence of insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, regardless of the actual amounts of those hormones themselves. Again, regardless of whether you're reducing calories through intermittent fasting or through continuous calorie restriction, we see that levels of this actually increase. Which I guess if you wanted to make leaps and bounds from that, this seems like it could actually be a positive thing.
Generally, weight loss is just associated with this
Right.
change in general. So it's nothing to do specifically with intermittent fasting, which is kind of what we got to with the weight loss thing, is that like intermittent fasting has all this hype around it, but really you're just reducing your calories.
There's another study done in females where, again, they did a intermittent fasting protocol where they had a 4 to 6 hour eating window for 8 weeks. They didn't see a difference in testosterone or sex hormone binding globulin, but they did see decreases in something called DHEA, which is a precursor to androgens and estrogens. Low levels of this has been associated with reduced libido, vaginal dryness, and osteoporosis. This actually seems like a negative in terms of intermittent fasting.
Yeah, I don't know, the research is really sparse here. And I think that the thing that's interesting is we have all these people online, you're like, you gotta do this, you can't be doing this. On the 3rd day of your cycle, make sure that you eat this much at this time, and then on the 5th day of your cycle, do this. But really, there's like 3 studies, and some of them are pretty bad, actually.
Small sample sizes, not necessarily having controls.
Men, don't worry, we didn't forget about you. I find the discourse in the male space actually a little bit more confusing than in the female space, because like on the one hand we have people being like, don't do intermittent fasting, it's going to drop your testosterone and you're going to lose your manhood, and then you have the other side of things where it's like it's going to boost your testosterone. Some of these levels I was seeing was 3,000%. I think that would be also a medical issue. We do have some more consistent research in this area. There have been 4 studies. All of these studies were looking at the effect of a 8-16 fast, which is what we did, time restricted feeding on male reproductive hormones. Some of them had exercise, some of them didn't have exercise, and the consistent thing that we saw was that intermittent fasting drops your testosterone levels by up to 27%. Actually, in one study showed 27% drop. Sorry guys. So intermittent fasting for men, I would say if your testosterone is something that you're concerned about, probably not the best thing. So what do we know about intermittent fasting and the menstrual cycle? The answer, based off of science, not that much, because we haven't studied it in great detail, but we have covered how does fasting affect your body, how does calorie restriction affect your body in our first video, and we know that it actually causes changes to your stress hormones and can increase a lot of your stress hormones, including cortisol and norepinephrine.
Calorie restrictions, right? So whether you're fasting, whether you're just dieting through other means, cutting out foods, and not an uncommon outcome is possibly losing your periods or just compromising your menstrual cycle as a whole. So if you are experiencing something like that, like changes to your menstruation that doesn't seem like in a positive way, I would advise kind of maybe getting connected with a dietitian who might be able to kind of see what's going on with your food or nutritional intake. Reaching out to a doctor could also be a good idea.
There isn't a lot of research in this area, but we do know from some research that's out there on fasting during Ramadan that typically during periods of fasting we see changes to the menstrual cycle. They're not super like long-lived, like typically after a few months after the fast has taken place, things go back to normal. But I guess if you're doing it all the time, you wouldn't go back to normal. If you are doing intermittent fasting and you notice changes in your menstrual cycle, definitely go see a medical professional. But overall, there's just really not enough evidence out there to make any kind of recommendations about intermittent fasting and hormones, unless like you're a man and you're worried about your testosterone maybe. I wish we had more exciting news.
I know, I wish we had like a more concrete
something like a
takeaway.
little bit punchier, like women, you can't be intermittent fasting on day 5 of your period.
Although I will say, based on everything, it seems like it's either like the effects of intermittent fasting is almost like neutral to negative, maybe, except for weight loss.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty accurate. Yeah.
Next week, we're going to talk all about longevity.
That's an interesting topic because there actually is more research on that, so we can say a lot more.
So I'm sure you do not want to miss that. So thank you for watching, first of all. I forget what we say.
But be sure you like, comment, and subscribe.
Yes.
Hit the notification bell so you never miss a video, including our next video on longevity and intermittent fasting. And follow us on Instagram and our TikTok.
Thank you for watching.
Bye!